Well, we've seen a constant upward swing. There was a little dip at one point around 2018 where there was a reduction in overdose deaths. But since then, we've seen a gradual increase, and then we knew that stimulants were going to make a comeback, and they have. And now the combination, it's rare to find a stimulant without opioids in it these days. So we're seeing an increase in stimulant deaths as well. And there is some variation with different demographics. So we have seen stimulant deaths actually go down in Black American community while it continues to rise in both the white non-Hispanic and the Hispanic communities. We're also seeing it continue. Obviously, last year was a record number of overdose deaths, and a lot of that may have to do with the epidemic and lack of ability to address that more easily. And we are seeing a greater influx, and I think we're going to see an even greater influx with the recent events in the Middle East, Afghanistan being one of the world's largest producers of both opioids and methamphetamine. And now with a Taliban that is financed through drug production, we're probably going to see the market flooded even further with it, so it become cheaper, more accessible, and we can expect more problems from that. Well, you would think we'd made some gains because we've advanced in some of our practices, and some of the MAP programs have reduced, at least for a period of time, some of the overdose deaths, and yet we did see a record number last year. So where are we? We're in the never-ending battle, and I think that we make a mistake sometimes when we talk about the opioid epidemic, because it's really it's a drug epidemic, as we're seeing now with that rise in the stimulants. They never really went away. It's just been sort of a swing as to what's most prevalent, and that often has to do with what is most available and affordable. So the addicted mind is going to find a substance. So until we deal with that end of it, we're going to be in this battle, and it's not going to get better, particularly as we have now ever increasing access to ever cheaper versions of it, the fentanyl, which is so much more, for the drug dealer, cost efficient to produce and so much more deadly, that's going to be a battle that we're going to continue to fight until we find a way to address the demand. There was a very clear study in June of 2020 that 13% of our population had sought some sort of self-medicating through substances. That's 13% admitted during a poll that they were now using a substance to deal with the isolation and their anxiety over the epidemic. You add to that the fact that we saw an increase, an exponential increase in anxiety and depression, and yet less people able to or willing to seek treatment during an epidemic. So we have more need, less care going on. And so I believe that it's the perfect storm, and that's why we had that record number of overdoses. Oh, undoubtedly. So the people who used community resources and supports that weren't available for a long time, your community support groups like the 12-step meetings, faith-based services churches were closed for a period of time, and even now, they're at less than 50% of the capacity that they were before. So people who left during the initial shutdowns, most of them never came back. So what are they doing? They're not getting that kind of community support. And I will tell you that some of them are online on Zoom processes, and we have expanded telehealth practices, but it hasn't filled the gap. There's still more people not receiving services, and yet even more needing services. So it's reduced access to care, or at least the perceived access, and it's increased the need. Then you've got that isolation factor, which has always been a strong negative for the person in addiction or having a substance use disorder that needs help. So when they're not able to be around people, and that's the other thing, is telehealth is a great tool, but it doesn't really replace that one-on-one experience. And when I was working as a therapist, and I have a patient in front of me, and I can see them eye to eye, and I can read their body language. We're taught to read body language for trauma, for shame, for all kinds of things that I can't necessarily see in a controlled telehealth environment. So we're not able. Telehealth is great, don't get me wrong, but it's not the same as in-person services. Well, there's a new, I don't know if you're aware of this, but CareerSource has a new recovery navigator that's there to help people in early recovery find jobs. So we do have, job finding, because working and volunteering, having time filled are extremely important. So taking advantage of resources like that, which there is special funding for, at least for the next 2 years, maybe longer. There's a lot of support groups. I know that there's a 12-step or a Celebrate Recovery or some other thing going on. We have a recovery churches now that are specifically for the recovery demographic. We have a lot of outpatient services. There's a lot going on, and a lot more people could be taking advantage of it. Some of the issues are financial. When you're in early recovery, often finances are difficult, and some of these are fee-based services. Some of them are not. The community services like the 12-step and self-help meetings and groups like that, the faith-based centers, those are typically free services. Information is part of the problem, not knowing that they exist, people not knowing what's available, where it is. Transportation, again, most people just leaving a recovery program or leaving incarceration for drug-related issues often don't have transportation. In our area, it's not the greatest, and they don't know that there are resources like people you can call at Intergroup for 12-step meetings or other folks that will be glad to come pick them up and take them to these services. Well, that's a very case-by-case and individualized real answer, but in short, the trick is to understand what you're dealing with. Understand that their actions are not based on who they are as much as what they're experiencing. It truly hijacks the brain. So when you stop trying to fight the person and begin to fight the problem and love the person, I think you're in the right place. So what does that look like? And that's where it becomes very specific to the individual dynamics of that family and that individual. What is enabling for one situation may actually be good help in another. And it really just comes down to is what I'm doing, moving them toward getting the help they need and helping themselves the way they need, or is it enabling them to stay ill, enabling them to stay in this bad spot? And certainly there are professionals out there that can guide you on that. I talk to families about it all the time. But there's no one single answer. It's a very moving target depending on that family. Trick is love them, but with a firm love that does not partake in the downside of it.